I've hesitated to write this for a long time. I started and deleted it several times because once you write it down, it becomes real. As long as it's unwritten, you can convince yourself that it was just a hallucination, that it was stress, or that 15-year-old boys are prone to fantasies anyway. But I'm not 15 anymore. I'm 22, and I still sleep with the lights on. So I'm writing this not because I want to, but because if I don't, it will stay inside me for another 7 years, and another 7 after that, and so on until the end. Maybe some of you know the village of Tripilia. It's in the Kiev area, somewhere between Obuchiv and Halepia. There's no direct bus there. There's nothing direct about it at all. You have to get to the district center, then catch a shuttle to the town of Tetsenki, and from there, it's another 20 minutes on foot along a dirt road, or you wait for a local with a car. My mom called my grandmother in advance, and she said she'd ask Victor, a neighbor, to pick me up at the bus stop. This was in early July, 7 years ago. I didn't want to go. No normal 15-year-old wants to spend the summer in a village with no internet, no friends, no anything. I whined for 2 weeks, but Mom was adamant. She was starting some professional development courses, Dad was going away on a business trip, and she didn't want to leave me alone for the whole summer.
I had seen my grandmother maybe 3 times in my life, no more. She almost never visited us, and we visited her even less. Mom said the village was too far and the road too difficult. Grandmother said the same thing. Now I think that maybe Mom sensed something, some kind of animal instinct you can't explain in words. You just don't go there, that's all. You're not drawn to it. But I was taken anyway. The first thing I remember is the silence. I don't mean just the absence of city noise. I knew the village would be quiet. I was prepared for that. But when the shuttle dropped me off by the side of the road and drove away, I was left standing with my backpack in the middle of the road, and the silence crashed down on me like something physical, dense, heavy. The forest stood on both sides, tall spruces, old, with dark lower branches missing their needles, looking like broken arms. The sky was whitish, not blue, just whitish, as if someone had diluted it with milk. And no birds. I read later that a healthy forest always has birds. Always. If there are no birds, something is wrong. A predator is near, or disease, or something that has no name in biology textbooks. There were no birds. I stood there for about 20 minutes and started taking out my phone. 1 bar of service, barely alive. I texted Mom that I'd arrived. The SMS went through on the second try. Then, I heard the sound of an engine. A car appeared around the bend. An old rust-colored Chevrolet with green patches. Behind the wheel was a man about 60, large, with a gray face and white eyebrows. He stopped, rolled down the window and looked at me. A long look, longer than necessary just to make sure I was the right person. "Lev?" he asked, finally. "Yeah," I said. "Victor?" He didn't answer right away. Again, that pause, 3 or 4 seconds, as if the question reached him with a delay, like a bad video call. "Get in," he said. I got in. The car smelled of earth and something sweet, slightly nauseating. I figured it was fertilizer or some rustic scent I didn't know. For the whole ride, Victor stayed silent. I tried to ask about my grandmother, about the village, just to fill the silence. He answered in monosyllables, with pauses. "She's waiting. We'll be there soon." The forest floated by outside. Spruces gave way to aspens, then back to spruces. Then came swampy meadows, yellow grass, black water in the ditches, and patches of reeds. The road narrowed to 2 tracks. "Have you lived here long?" I asked, just to say something. "Long time," he said. "Is it nice here?" He looked at me in the rearview mirror. His gaze was absolutely empty, no emotion at all. "It's quiet,"
he said. I didn't try to talk anymore. The village appeared unexpectedly. The road turned, and an opening appeared between the trees. About 20 houses, maybe a few more, wooden, darkened, with small gardens, some abandoned, with sunken roofs and yards overgrown with nettles. In the middle, something like a street, dirt, muddy, even though it hadn't rained in a while. Dilapidated fences along the edges. A few people were in the yards. They looked at the car, then at me, and didn't turn away. That was the first thing that hit me. No one turned away. When you see a strange car, a strange person, you usually look for a second or two and go back to your business. Not here. They just stood and watched. A woman at the well holding a bucket, a man by a fence, a teenager a bit older than me near some shed.
Everyone silent, expressionless, until the Chevrolet disappeared around the corner. My grandmother's house was at the end of the street, almost by the forest. Sturdy, with blue shutters and apple trees in the yard. A normal village house, nothing scary. Grandmother was standing by the gate. I barely remembered her. I hadn't seen her in at least 8 years. Small, thin, in a dark dress and a headscarf, even though it was warm. Wrinkled, like all old village grandmothers. She watched me get out of the car. "Lev," she said, "you've grown." Her voice was quiet, slightly raspy. She hugged me. Her arms were strong, stronger than I expected. She smelled of wood smoke and herbs. "Thank you, Victor," she said to the man. He nodded without getting out of the car and drove away. I noticed he never once looked at my grandmother. Not once. He only looked straight ahead. At the time, I didn't think much of it. The first 3 days were just boring. Grandmother fed me 3 times a day. Borscht, potatoes, eggs, milk from a neighbor's goat. I wandered around the yard, read the books I'd downloaded in advance, tried to catch a signal to text my friends. The signal only worked in the field if you stood in the far corner and held your phone above your head. Grandmother was normal. She talked about the garden, the weather, some relatives I didn't know. She told me what the village was like back under Soviet rule. She fed the chickens. Everything was standard. Only sometimes she would stop mid-sentence. She'd be talking and then stop. For 3 or 4 seconds. She'd look to the side or at the table or out the window. Then she'd continue as if nothing happened. I decided it was just old age. Old people do that. On the 4th day, I went to look around the village. It wasn't that there was anything to see, I was just tired of sitting in the yard. I walked up and down the street, met a couple of people, said hello. They answered with a pause, but they answered. By one of the houses, an old man was sitting on a bench, very old, dried up, wearing a cap. He watched me walk by. When I leveled with him, he said, "You're Anna's grandson?" "Yeah," I said. "Lev." "Uh-huh," he said. He was silent for a moment. "You remember your mom?" I didn't understand the question. What did he mean, remember? I had just come from her. "Well, yeah," I said, cautiously. "I do." He nodded slowly, looking past me. "That's good," he said. "Remembering. That's good." I kept walking. I looked back 50 meters later. He was still watching me, not moving, just watching. At night, I lay on a metal bed with a wire mesh frame and listened to the village. It was quiet. Then, not immediately, closer to 1 in the morning, when I was almost asleep, I heard footsteps outside, slow, heavy ones on the dirt. Someone was walking along the fence, then stopped. Then, very, very quietly, almost at the threshold of hearing, a voice. 2 syllables. Couldn't make out what exactly. I waited. Silence. In the morning, I asked my grandmother who walks the street at night. She was stirring the porridge and didn't turn around right away. "No one walks," she said. "You dreamed it." I wasn't asleep. "You dreamed it," she repeated in a flat voice.
On the 6th day, Alexander disappeared. Alexander, that was his name, but everyone just said Alex. even though the guy was nearly 50. He lived 3 houses down from my grandmother. I'd seen him a couple of times. Solid, reddish, with a red face. He gave the impression of being a lively person, not as sluggish as the others. Once, he'd shouted to me over the fence, "Hey, city boy, you like tomatoes?" and tossed 3 over the fence. I thanked him, and he laughed. The only laughter I heard in the village the whole time. On the 6th day in the morning, I noticed there was no movement around his house. Same in the evening. The curtains were drawn. The dog that usually barked in its kennel was silent. The next day, the same thing. I asked my grandmother, and she said, "He must have gone to the city on business. He didn't tell anyone. People leave." 2 days later, Alex was found. Not in the city. I found out by accident. I heard a conversation by the well as I was walking by. 2 women were talking to each other quietly, and a fragment reached me. "Near the far field," they said, "all broken." One of them noticed me and stopped talking. The second one looked at me with that same empty gaze. "What happened?" I asked. "Nothing," said the first one. "Go on, boy." I learned the rest later from the only person in the village who talked to me properly. Den, a guy about 18, lived on the outskirts, right by the swamp. He approached me himself the next day in the garden. "Heard about Alex?" he asked, without preamble. "Partly," I said. Den looked around. Literally looked around, like in a movie, slowly, in a 360-degree turn. "They found him by the far field," he said quietly. "Where the old drainage system is, that's where he was." Den stopped and licked his lips. "Broken, you know? Not cut, not beaten. Broken. His arms the wrong way, his neck." He didn't finish, as if someone very strong had just taken and... "A beast?" I asked, because I had to say something. "What beast?" Den looked at me strangely. "There are no such beasts here. Bears left 20 years ago. Wolves don't break things like that. I've seen wolf work. This is different." "What is it then?" He looked around again. "I don't know," he said. "This isn't the first time. Before you arrived, another person went missing in the winter. Old Mary from the other end of the village. They said she was taken to the hospital, but no one saw a car." We were silent. "Have you lived here long?" I asked. "All my life, 18 years. "And has it always been like this?" Den looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, almost in a whisper, "No, not always. Something changed about 3 years ago. I can't explain how, but people gradually started becoming different. One, then another, then more. It's like something in them is burning out." I didn't know what to say. The sun went behind a cloud, and the garden immediately became gray and cold. "You be careful, city boy," Den said. "Don't go out at night and lock the door. Bolt it. You understand?" He left without saying goodbye. On the 9th day, I saw Victor twice. First in the morning, when I went to the well for water. He was standing by his fence, looking at me. I nodded. He didn't respond. Then, 2 hours later, when I was at the other end of the village, by a broken plow that stood by the road like a monument to something inexplicable, I saw him again. He was walking down the street toward me, about 50 meters away. The same figure, the same gray shirt, the same white eyebrows. I stopped. He stopped too, and looked at me. I looked back, just reflexively, and saw him at the well. The same figure, the same shirt, standing by the well, looking toward me. I looked back to the road. The first one was still standing there. Then he slowly turned and walked into an alley between the houses. When I looked back at the well, no one was there anymore. I stood there for 5 minutes without moving, trying to find an explanation.
Similar clothes, similar figures. I just mixed them up. It's possible, it's explainable, but white eyebrows are so white that they're visible from far away. I had seen the same man at the same time in 2 different places. I went home and sat on the bed. My hands were shaking a little. I didn't understand why.
That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling. The room was dark, the shutters closed, no moon visible. There was no clock. My phone showed 1:30. Then I heard my grandmother. Or rather, I didn't hear her. I just realized she wasn't sleeping. Quiet sounds were coming from her room through the wall. Footsteps. Not toward the door, not away from the door. Just back and forth inside the room. Evenly, like a pendulum. This went on for a long time, maybe an hour. I lay there and listened to the rhythmic steps behind the wall, thinking that old people have insomnia, that it's normal, that there's nothing strange about it. Then, the steps stopped. I waited. Silence. Then, quietly, almost inaudibly, her door opened. I heard it by the creak. It was a specific one, long and drawn out. I'd studied it over those days. Footsteps in the hallway, slow, approaching my door, then stopped. I stared at the door. It was left ajar, not locked. I wasn't locking it yet. The gap was dark. Then it became a little darker. That meant someone was standing on the other side, blocking the light from the hallway window. I didn't move. I tried to breathe as quietly as possible. The standing lasted maybe 5 minutes, maybe 3. In moments like those, time stretches differently. Then, the footsteps went back. The creak of my grandmother's door. Silence.
I didn't sleep until dawn. In the morning, my grandmother was the same as usual. She got up, started the stove, put the kettle on, and asked if I'd slept well. "Fine," I said. I looked at her. She was standing at the stove with her back to me, stirring something. Her back was straight. Her movements were smooth. "Grandma," I said cautiously, "did you get up in the night?" A pause, longer than usual.
"No," she said. "I sleep well. The village air helps." She turned around and looked at me. She smiled. The smile was correct. Wrinkles by the eyes, everything as it should be. But somehow, I can't explain it in words. Somehow it didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes remained flat while her mouth was smiling. Like a photograph of a person told to smile. And they did, but they were thinking of something else. "Eat," she said. "The porridge is getting cold." I texted Mom that same day, standing in the garden in the far corner, lifting my phone above my head to catch a signal. "Mom, it's strange here. I want to come home." She answered an hour later. "Lev, you're just homesick for the city. Another 3 weeks, just hang in there. There's fresh air, nature. Grandma is happy you came. Don't hurt her feelings." I wrote, "The people here are strange, and something is wrong with Grandma." A long pause. Then, "What do you mean wrong? Is she sick?" I didn't know how to explain it. I wrote, "I don't know, just strange." Mom wrote, "Lev, you're a grown boy. Don't make things up. Call me in the evening." I tried to call in the evening. The signal wouldn't break through. Not in the evening, not the next day. On the 11th day, Den came to me again. Or rather, I met him. He was standing by our fence, waiting. He looked bad. Dark circles under his eyes. Unshaven, even though he used to shave. "I need to tell you something," he started without preamble. "Just not here." We walked to the old apple orchard at the edge of the village, abandoned, with high grass and gnarled old trees. There wasn't a single house nearby.
"I think," Den said, and it was obvious it was hard for him to say this, that he didn't believe what he was about to say,
I think there are almost no normal people left here. I stared at him. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I'm saying. He spoke quietly, barely moving his lips. Remember Alex? The one found by the field? Yeah. We were friends since childhood. I knew him like I know myself. Intonations, gestures, everything. Well, 2 days before he went missing, I talked to him. And it wasn't him. You understand? He spoke with his voice, stood like he stands. Everything was right. But something was off. He asked me about my family, like he didn't know things he was obligated to know. He asked what my mother's name was. Alex had known my mother since birth, and he suddenly asks her name like he's hearing about her for the first time. He looks me in the eyes and waits for an answer. I felt a chill inside. You think that? I don't think. Dan swallowed. I know. I saw it. The day before yesterday, I was walking past Sophia's house. I hear her talking to someone in the kitchen. Voices. I walked up to the window. Not on purpose, just walking by. Sophia is standing with her back to me, and across from her is herself. Exactly her. The same housecoat, the same hair. They were talking. Then the one across from her turned, and He stopped, looking at the ground. I saw her face. It was like a mask, lifeless. The features were correct, but it looked drawn on, and it was moving wrong. When she spoke, her mouth moved with a delay, like bad dubbing in a movie. She looked at the window, and I ran away. Silence. Dan, I said slowly, you need to get out of here.
I tried, he said quietly, tiredly. A month ago, I tried. I got to the road, wanted to hitch a ride. Stood there for 2 hours, not a single car. Then I went back for my stuff. I thought I'd walk to Kaharlik. I could walk 20 miles. I packed a bag, walked out of the house, and suddenly they were all standing there on the street, watching me in silence. Everyone, all of them, standing and watching, no one saying a word. I stood for a while, and then I went back. Why did you go back? You should have kept going. He looked at me. There was something in his gaze I hadn't seen in people before. Not even fear. Something deeper than fear. Something that happens when a person has realized something that can never be unlearned. Because my parents were standing among them, he said. My mom and dad. And I don't know if it's them or... He didn't finish. I didn't know what to say. What is there to say? Come back tomorrow morning, he said. We'll talk more. I found out something about what's going on here. Not everything, but something. Come early, before they... He looked around again. Before they're active. In the morning, they're slower. He left. I stood in the apple orchard and watched him go, and the grass rustled around me, and it was very quiet. In the morning, Dan wasn't home. I arrived at 7 a.m. The door was locked. No one answered my knocking. Windows closed, silent. I waited until 10 a.m., walked around the house. In the garden behind the house, in the high grass, I saw something dark. It was Den's jacket, blue with yellow stripes on the sleeves. He always wore it. It lay in the grass as if he'd taken it off and thrown it, or it had fallen off him. I never saw Den again.
No one in the village was surprised by his disappearance. No one looked for him. When I asked the woman by the well, she looked at me and said in the same flat voice my grandmother used about Alex, he must have left. After that day, something switched in my head. I don't know how else to describe it. It's as if before that, I was looking for explanations, inventing logic, telling myself coincidence, stress, village oddities. After Den, I stopped. I started observing systematically, as best I could. The dogs didn't come out of the houses.
I'd noticed this in the first few days, but only now did I realize how important it was. Village dogs should be wandering the streets. Here, everyone sits in kennels or behind closed doors. They sit quietly, no barking. When one of the residents walks by, they're silent, not a sound. Once I approached a dog in a yard. A ginger mutt was lying by its kennel. It heard my footsteps and stood up, looked at me, then sniffed my hand, and suddenly pressed itself against me. Pressed its whole shivering body against my legs. It didn't whine, didn't bark, just shivered and pressed in. The owner came out of the house, a solid woman with a braid. I'd seen her a couple of times, and said, "Go on, don't touch." She didn't say it to me. She said it to the dog. The ginger one immediately went into the kennel and crawled inside. I looked at the woman, she looked at me, then turned and went into the house. I also noticed they almost don't eat. If there's normal life in a village, people carry bags of groceries, buy at the market, bring stuff from the city. Here, nothing of the sort. No one brings anything in. Some have gardens in name only, but no one digs, waters, or harvests anything.
And most importantly, the thing that took my breath away, they almost don't blink. I realized this by accident. I was standing talking to a woman named Alina, answering some question of hers, and suddenly noticed I'd been looking at her for 3 minutes, and she hadn't blinked once. Eyes open, moist, looking at me, and not a single movement of the eyelids. After that, I started checking everyone. I counted the seconds. A normal person blinks every 3 to 5 seconds. It's a reflex, hard to suppress. These people? No. They could look at you for 15, 20 seconds without a single blink, sometimes longer. Sometimes it was like they remembered and blinked several times in a row quickly, as if they'd realized they'd forgotten. On the 13th day, I started watching my grandmother. It was hard. It's still hard to remember because a part of me wanted her to be real until the very end. She was the only living person near me, or so I thought. I didn't want to lose that faith, you understand? But I started watching. At night, I hadn't been sleeping well since the night I heard her footsteps by my door. Every night, she walked around the room in the same way, wall to wall, evenly. She never went to the bathroom, never opened the fridge, just walked inside the room. At meals, she didn't eat, or rather, she pretended. Put food on the plate, moved it with a spoon, sometimes brought it to her mouth, but I watched the plate. It didn't decrease, or it decreased so slowly it was clear there was no real swallowing. She was simulating. Once I said, "Grandma, you're not eating much." She looked at me, then took a spoon and put a full spoonful of porridge into her mouth. Chewed, swallowed.
"Everything is fine," she said, looking at me. "I'm eating." But something flickered in her eyes, irritation at being caught. Also, the voices. I heard it 3 times, and each time my heart stopped. When she thought I was asleep or couldn't hear, a different voice came from her room. Not another person. She herself was speaking in a different voice. Lower, thicker, like it was more real, I guess. I couldn't make out the words, but it definitely wasn't an old woman's voice. And once I got up at night, I had to use the bathroom, and I walked past her door, which was slightly ajar, and glanced in. She was standing by the window with her back to me, looking into the darkness. That alone isn't scary, but her head was turned a few degrees further than a human head can turn. Not so much that her neck was completely broken, no, but more, like the range had been extended. I went to the bathroom and back, trying not to breathe. She didn't turn around, kept looking out the window. On the 14th day, I made the decision to leave. That night, I had my backpack with me, my phone with some charge left, and cash, 3,000 rubles that Mom had given me just in case. 8 miles to Tatsenki along the dirt road through the forest. There's a bus stop there. There are people. There's civilization.
I didn't know why Dan hadn't managed to leave. Maybe he hesitated. Maybe something went wrong. I decided, no hesitation. Pack quietly, leave while it's dark. Walk fast, and don't stop. I acted like normal all day. Helped around the house, ate, answered questions, tried not to look at my grandmother too intensely, tried not to think about what I was thinking. At dinner, she asked, "Lev, wouldn't you like to call your mom?" "I would," I said, "but there's no signal."
I can ask Victor. He has a good phone. You can go see him right now. I looked at her. She was smiling. A correct smile. Flat eyes. "It's late," I said. "Tomorrow." "He doesn't sleep that late. It's no trouble for him." The smile widened a little. "Go right now. He's waiting." My heart gave a jolt. He's waiting. He knows I'm coming. A pause a bit longer than usual. "I mean, he won't mind. He's a kind man. Go." "I'll go tomorrow," I said. "I want to sleep." "Fine," she said in a flat voice. "Fine. Rest." That night, around 2 a.m., I packed my bag. I did everything slowly, without unnecessary movements. Phone in the inner pocket. Money there too. I'd taken my documents just in case on the second day and tucked them into my things. And my grandmother didn't ask. The house was silent. My grandmother's footsteps from behind the wall were going back and forth, like a metronome. I waited another hour, then very slowly opened the window. It barely creaked. I'd noticed 2 weeks ago that it opened quietly, and practiced several times just in case. Back then, I didn't know which case. Now, I did.
I climbed out the window, stood on the garden bed underneath, and lowered the frame back down. The garden was dark, damp, smelling of earth and vegetable tops. No one. The moon was hidden by clouds, the darkness almost absolute. That's good. It means I couldn't be seen either. I moved toward the garden gate at the far end, trying not to step on any branches. I walked through the potato tops, then through the onion beds, then stopped. At the end of the garden, by the gate, a figure stood, dark, motionless, looking in my direction. I froze, not breathing. The figure stood there, then slowly turned and walked out through the gate into the darkness. I waited a few minutes, then walked to the gate, opened it, looked out into the alley. No one. I walked. A village street at night is another world. I walked along the fences, hugging them, trying to stay in the shadows. There wasn't a single street lamp in the village, only the windows of houses, some with lights on. At this hour, almost 3 a.m., the lights are on where people are awake, or where they never sleep. In one window, I saw a silhouette, standing, motionless, looking at the street. I walked by quickly, without raising my gaze. In another, 2 people were standing side by side, also looking out. I walked faster, almost running. The village ended. The road, 2 dirt ruts, disappeared into the forest. I turned onto it and picked up the pace. A forest at night is also another world. The spruces stand like walls, darkness between them. Branches close off above the road. I turned on my phone's flashlight. A small, pathetic beam picked out a meter in front of me. I turned it off, realized it was worse with light. It blinds you and kills your peripheral vision. I walked in the darkness. Absolute silence. No birds, no wind, no animals. Then, behind me, footsteps. I stopped. The footsteps continued for a few seconds, fast, confident, and stopped too. I stood. Silence. I started walking again. Footsteps behind me, a second later. They weren't running after me, just following, keeping a distance of 30 meters probably. I stepped off the road into the forest, stood behind a thick spruce, hid, and waited.
The footsteps approached. Slow now, cautious. The moon came out from behind the clouds for a second, and I saw her. Grandmother was walking along the road. A small figure, dark dress, headscarf. She walked, looking straight ahead. Then she stopped at the spot where I'd turned into the forest. She stood there, then turned her head slowly, too slowly, in my direction. I pressed myself against the spruce. The bark dug into my cheek. She was looking into the darkness of the forest, into the darkness where I stood. Then a voice sounded. Her voice. Soft, affectionate, just as a grandmother's voice should be. Lev, I know you're there. Come out. It's cold, you know. I didn't move. Lev, the mosquitoes are eating you. Come out. We'll go home. It's late. Mom called, the voice said. On Victor's phone. She's looking for you. Another tone, slightly different, deeper. Come out. You're tired. It's bad to be alone here. I watched her from behind the spruce. The moon went away again. Darkness. Then a sound I will never forget. A quiet, organic, wet crunch. Like breaking a green branch, only 1,000 times more repulsive. The sound came from her, from the small figure on the road. As if something inside her was rearranging itself.
I ran, not along the road, but through the forest, between the trees, straight through. Branches whipped my face, my feet sank into the moss. I stumbled and ran again. Did I hear anything behind me? I don't know. I didn't look back. I ran. I don't know how much time passed, maybe 20 minutes. Then an opening appeared between the trees, and I jumped out onto another road, not the one from the village. Asphalt. Real asphalt. I fell to my knees right there on it. I was breathing, couldn't stand up. Then I heard an engine. Headlights from the darkness far away. A truck. I stood up, walked into the middle of the road, raised my hands. The headlights approached, didn't stop. I stood there. The truck braked 5 meters from me. A man leaned out, young, in a baseball cap, annoyed. What are you doing, throwing yourself under the wheels? Take me, I said. My voice was strange. Please, to any city, any settlement, please. The man looked at me, scratched face, dirty, with twigs in my hair, and something in his facial expression changed. The annoyance vanished. Get in, he said. Get in, we'll figure it out. I climbed into the cab. The truck started moving. I looked in the side mirror. A small, dark figure stood on the shoulder and watched us go. Then the road turned and she disappeared. It was 40 kilometers to the district center. The man's name was Roman. He was hauling some construction cargo. He didn't ask many questions. He looked at me, gave me water from a bottle, said, "Got lost?" I said, "Yes." He nodded and didn't ask anymore.
In the district center, he dropped me off at the bus station. It was already light, early morning, around 5. There was one cashier at the station and 2 old men on a bench. The most ordinary world. Brick walls, bus schedules, the smell of coffee from the cashier's thermos. I bought a ticket to Kyiv. The nearest bus was in 2 hours. I sat on the bench and didn't move for those 2 hours. In Kyiv, I called my mom from a payphone at the station. My phone was dead. She picked up on the second ring. "Lev, where are you calling from? What happened?" "Mom," I said. "Mom, I left. I'm in Kyiv. Please, buy me a ticket home." "What do you mean, left? Did you abandon your grandmother?" "Mom," I spoke slowly, carefully choosing my words. "Mom, something isn't right there. I can't explain it over the phone. Please, buy me a ticket." Silence. "Lev, what happened? Are you okay?" "No," I said honestly, "but physically I'm intact. Buy the ticket."
Okay, find the ticket window. She called my grandmother later. She told me about it later. Grandmother answered right away. She said I'd run away in the night without warning, that she didn't understand why, that she was very worried. According to Mom, her voice sounded distressed. Mom asked. I read it in her eyes when she met me at the station in Kyiv. She wanted to ask, "What did you do? What scared your grandmother? Why did you run away from an old woman who was waiting for you?" She didn't ask out loud. She saw my face and didn't ask.
I spent a month at home, barely getting up. I slept with the lights on, asked Mom not to close my bedroom door. Couldn't explain why. Then it got a little easier. Life, it pulls you in, you know? School, friends, everything normal. You start to think that maybe you exaggerated, that you were an impressionable teenager, that the village got to your nerves, that Alex's death was an accident, that Den just moved somewhere and you made everything else up. I almost convinced myself. Almost. Then Mom told me she'd gotten through to the administration of that district. She wanted to ask about my grandmother, who had stopped answering the phone. They told her the village of Trepelia had been struck from the records 3 years ago as uninhabited. The last resident on file had died 4 years ago. Mom was silent for a long time after she told me that. Then she said, "They must not have updated the database. Bureaucracy." And she changed the subject. I didn't try to convince her otherwise. The last thing I want to write. 6 months ago, I was walking through the center of Kiev. A normal day, not late, crowded. I stopped at a traffic light. Lots of people nearby, everyone waiting for the green. I felt a gaze. I don't know how to explain it. I didn't see it out of the corner of my eye, didn't hear any movement. I just felt it, as if something warm touched the back of my neck, only unpleasant. I turned around. 3 meters from me stood a woman, elderly, small, in a dark jacket. She was looking at me. I looked at her. She kept looking, then blinked once slowly, somehow unnaturally slowly, and turned away. The light changed, and everyone started walking. I stood there for a few more seconds, then started walking too. But I looked at everyone around me, at their eyes, counted the seconds between blinks, and I wish I hadn't, because I counted 2 more in those 15 minutes while walking to the metro. 2 more who almost didn't blink, and both of them were looking at me.